Teaching is hard, and oftentimes it isn't what happens in the classroom that makes the job difficult. It's what happens before and after school, during passing periods, at lunch, in meetings, or in our lives outside of school that challenges our ability to stick with the profession. TeacherGuard is committed to focusing on making teaching sustainable and enjoyable. We want to make the rewards of the profession seem more attainable and the challenges more bearable. Our mentorship model pairs teachers with consistent daily support from a peer educator. Through TeacherGuard's four sustainability principles, we will walk the challenging times with you and allow you to enjoy the wins and celebrations that come with this beautiful profession. See teacherguard.net for more information and to explore how you can join our community of educators today. We hope you enjoy today's podcast. All right, welcome back to the TeacherGuard podcast. Today, very excited, very honored to have one of my really good friends, mentor, and one of the first administrators that I ever worked with in my career. Rob Charlton is joining us today. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's been a while since we touched base. I think we've known each other. I think we're coming up on like 13 years now, and
Yeah.
here and there we kind
Yeah.
of catch up at different points in our careers. But let's start off just by having you introduce yourself, how you started as a teacher, and how you got to where you are today.
So, Rob Charlton, currently I'm an assistant principal at Ramona High School. How I got here, wow. Teaching is not a direct line. Let's just be honest
No,
about
no,
that. Your
it's
career is
not.
not a straight path. Um, so I was originally a biology major at UCSD and looking to be a doctor. So, of course, that's exactly where I ended up at. And I found out that I don't like working at hospitals and I don't like working in labs. And so I was like, all right, so, I like science. How can I apply this? And I thought about going into teaching. And then I transferred over to the teacher program and I was in there at UCSD. And then they started opening a school called Gompers up, which I'm sure could be a whole nother podcast if you want to talk about Gompers. And they were looking for teachers to go. So they selected me and 8 other people, and I went into Gompers for about 4 years, opening that as it turned into a charter school. And then, found that I wanted to go elsewhere, and so I moved to another school that was opening up, a new high school called Ifton, which was gonna be an extension of a K-8 program in Mid-City area in San Diego. Then we got moved over to an online program, which is where you and I met, and, I became the principal of an online program, and then you and I met, and we started to run an on-site, online type school hybrid model, which eventually, that institution kinda fell through, so then, um, you and I actually spent, what was that, about a year together planning,
Yeah, here.
a new school, which we got to the finals on, but we were not the winners. And then I actually ended up at Castle Park High School down in the Chula Vista area. Was there for 7 years. Served as the AVID coordinator. I really liked working with those students. It was great. And then the AVID program kind of closed down there, and so then I figured, I'll just go to Ramona because it's close to where I live. And so I've been here as an assistant principal now for the 3rd year.
Linear was not your path for
No,
sure.
man, it's bouncing all over the place. That's just how it goes.
Yeah. But I think, I mean, we are where we are because of all the decisions that we've made. And I think, right or wrong at the time, we make those the right decisions based on the work that we do when we get to where we are. So, um, I know that you are where you're meant to be, and the staff and students that you serve are lucky to have you. So,
Thank you for that.
happy for that.
I think the thing that's good for all new teachers as we talk about career paths is you gotta have in mind what you are trying to achieve with your career, and not every school is going to align with your vision of where you want to go. It's not to say it's bad or good. It's about matchmaking at that point. Like, does this school, does this administration, does this district match up with where I'm looking to go and what I'm trying to achieve? And when you find the right place, it'll just make sense to you. I think is the easiest way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And in that spirit, you know. the challenges that teachers face that either keep us or don't keep us in the profession. They vary year to year, placement to placement. Um, and so your answer to this would probably change over the course of however long you've been in education. But what would you say right now uh, is or are some of the variables that are most responsible for good teachers leaving the profession?
I think because the stats say that a lot of teachers leave the profession in the first 5 years, right? So, I don't think we're supporting new teachers walking in the door with how to take the onslaught of all the elements of teaching and how to help them organize it, confront it, and know how to deal with it while having this growth mindset over your first 5 years because it doesn't seem like it matters what teacher education program you come out of, you're not gonna be 100% prepared to walk in that door, so you're gonna have to do a lot of the on-the-job learning, and so what we need to do is lower that on-the-job learning with administrative support, onboarding processes, and getting teachers feeling comfortable with when they finally are in front of kids that they're confident they can do it, even though they're not gonna be perfect, because 'cause you're never gonna be perfect, but it's okay to, like, feel good with where you're at and not let the avalanche and stress overload you to where you're like, "I can't take this anymore." Um that I see is one of the pieces I think is is a lot of teachers walk in and there's like because 'cause you're a counselor, you're a teacher, you're like a school parent, you're like
Yeah,
you're a
everything.
mandated reporter, I mean, you gotta know about special education, you gotta know about regular education, you gotta know your content, you're teaching 3 different subjects, like, how I'm gonna manage all these personalities, and it just feels like an onslaught, and if you don't have the right mindset or somebody's not laying the pathway before you, it feels like overwhelming. Um, and if we were going to talk about solutions, I think, both you and I are products of the UCSD teacher education program, now called Education Services or Education Studies. Um, what I think that program does that I hear from a lot of my teachers they didn't get is we were turns for the first year or 2 where we were kinda halfway in the door teaching 60% load, but we also had 40% of a mentor coming in and somebody to talk to and give us ideas, and so we were, like, kinda halfway in and halfway still learning, and we weren't, like, all of a sudden, the 3 months of student teaching, and now here's your classroom and go, like, it felt like more of a transition than it felt like a, "Here you go, just get started and figure it out."
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the things that you touched on is the myriad of things that teachers are facing. But I think another thing that sometimes discourages teachers early on in their career is their perception of what administration wants from them. And so
Mm.
you've been in both shoes now, right? And from your perspective, I think I won't speak for you, but I would imagine that in your mind, you want teachers who have great relationships with kids, who come to work with a positive attitude, who are team players. And teachers may be coming into the classroom thinking, no, my administrator wants spotless lesson plans, perfect execution, disciplined students, a classroom that is quiet when they walk in. And that disconnect, I think, uh, sometimes is challenging for people to understand because they are now aspiring to a standard that doesn't align with the standards of the people that are evaluating them. So, can you say anything about how you feel about that?
I think just in my journey as a teacher, I ran into a lot of administrators who talk about the logistics of the classroom and don't talk so much about the goals of the classroom. And what that leads to, because look, every administrator you deal with is a former teacher, right? So obviously they must have been successful in some capacity to move into an administrative level. Hopefully you don't get one that is running away from being a teacher to be an administrator. That's a bad recipe right there. But they should be educational leads in some regard. Okay, so they'd had their way of doing things. So then if you get an administrator that's walking in the door saying, I only see it through this one lens and I'm trying to get you to be like me. That's not a recipe for success. That is setting up people to try and be something they're not. And So if you're talking about like you should be doing this and you shouldn't be doing this and that kind of logistical stuff on a day-to-day manner, I think you're over micromanaging the teacher, whereas you should be talking more like, here's what we're trying to achieve, and here's let me hear from you what you're doing to achieve it, or where can I help you to achieve it? And you have to be very open as an administrator to know that your way may not be the best way and it may not work for every person. So you got to give them that freedom. But it's funny because even as I'm saying that coming out of my mouth right now, I know that new teachers are walking in the door, and a lot of them are very like doctor diagnosis, like treatment kind of oriented in their brain. Like, just tell me that when this happens, what am I supposed to do? And as an administrator, you want to be like, well, I don't want to tell you exactly how to handle it because you need to learn your own methods of how you're going to deal with these situations going forward. So then you go, well, now I feel like I'm not giving you any support because I'm just kind of guiding you and saying, go that direction. And so teachers feel like you're not telling me what to do. So you really have to find this balance between how much support and how much do I back off to allow you to grow and learn on your own. But in either case, we have to make them feel it's okay. We have to make them feel like it's about progressing. It's not about being proficient and being perfect by a certain time point.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think this is a perfect segue into kind of the way I was hoping today's conversation would go, because just for transparency purposes, I haven't really gone deep and explained what Teacher Guard does to you. So I wanted to save that for this episode to kind of get your
Mm,
natural reaction and to kind of see, hey, um, everything that we've already spoken about, how does that mesh with what this program does? So, when I started Teacher Guard, my main mission was to keep good teachers in the classroom because, um, from either a teaching or an administrative standpoint, right, your uh, zone of control, your zone of influence is limited by your physical presence, right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think ultimately what would expand that and keep good teachers in the classroom is a program that I'm hoping I've created here. Essentially, there are two main components to Teacher Guard, and they both capitalize on what you talked about earlier with teachers leaving their credentialing programs, leaving that community that they were getting their credentials with, the professor support and all that, and all of a sudden kind of feeling alone. It addresses that. So
Mm,
what this mentorship model does is it pairs teachers, and could be new teachers, this could be veteran teachers, with a peer mentor. So someone else in the world that is teaching. And you've probably heard of millions of coaching models, right? We have to go through coaching models for clearing our credentials, for whatever. The reason I called it mentorship instead of coaching is because what I envision this relationship being, anytime that I see support for somebody from a professional development, the common theme is consistency. And so, me talking to someone once a month for 30 minutes or for an hour is great for that moment. But then, what about the other 29 days of the month where I could fall into
mhm,
problems and need support? Right. So, the spirit behind this program is yet you have one conversation a week with your mentor, but then you also engage in this thing called dynamic journaling, where you share a Google document with your mentor. And at the end of the day, the beginning of the day, whenever you have time to carve out a few minutes to type out, like, hey, today my principal walked in and then he walked out real quick. And I wasn't it a good part of my lesson? I'm not sure if he or she are happy with what I did. And now I'm going to bed with that anxiety. You write that down, you go to sleep because you've removed it from your brain, and by the next morning, the mentor is committed to going into that document and responding to you so that you feel like you are talking about what you are dealing with and getting feedback from a peer mentor before you have to go into the work the next day versus
mm.
carrying that with you. And then during your once a week session, you bring up that document and you recap everything that you spoke about and have deeper conversations about things. Um, so just laying that one component out, what are your thoughts about how that could support teacher sustainability?
Well, I think reflection is key, right? Like again, it's got to have this growth mindset. You got to be able to go like, okay, because like I said about the whole like diagnosis treatment model is like, and I was a science major for goodness sake. Like you want to be able to go like, I have a kid that's doing XYZ in my classroom. What is the prescription of what I should do to deal with that situation? But we all know it's all going to turn out to be trial and error because you could do what some other teacher did and it doesn't match to you, or you could do something that you actually experienced when you were in school and that doesn't work for that kid. And you can try five things and none of them work. And all of a sudden on number six, it works, right? So trial and error really works, but only works if you're reflecting on your practice. So if you're thinking about like, here's what I did. Did it work? Did it not work? Now you're adding with what you're talking about is a whole nother component of having peers that are going through the same situation, being able to say to you as well, like, okay, like help you through the reflective process. How did this work? Did it meet what you were going? What were you going for in the first place? People asking you the right questions so that your reflective process is in the right mode. And I think that's super helpful for teachers because like again, sometimes we walk into our classrooms and we feel like we're on an island, and it's really good to be able to bounce ideas off of people. You like to hope that everybody's got another teacher at the site that they have that with, but that's not always the case, especially when you look at all the different kinds of schools that are out there, you know?
Yeah, well, and even if you do have someone, right, there's something to I remember as an early teacher, I felt a lot of embarrassment, right, when a lesson didn't go the way
Mhm.
I wanted, or when somebody walked into my classroom and kids were jumping off the walls, or just not being quiet long enough for me to get a word in. Uh,
Mhm.
and even if I had a buddy, or somebody that was going through the same thing that I was at school, and I did, there was another intern that was going through the same program that I wasn't always super comfortable sharing with her, like, this is what I'm struggling with. And
Yeah.
so somebody that was somewhere else in a different context that I didn't see outside of my classroom and my school environment, I would have felt a lot more comfortable sharing. I don't know how to keep my class under control. There's there some
Mhm.
classroom management advice that you have, versus feeling like I had to go to my administration to get that, or again a
Yeah.
peer.
That's a hard conversation. Nobody wants to go up to the person who evaluates them and say,
Right.
"I don't feel like I'm able to do my job," right? I
Yeah.
mean, like any job, teaching doesn't matter. You feel like un unconfident. Like I feel like I'm telling on myself and you're gonna fire me. So I don't want to bring up
Mhm.
all the bad things that I'm going through. Yet, yes, ideally that is the one person that you should be able to get advice from who can guide you through the process. But the evaluatory nature of an administrator kind of ruins that ability to have that conversation.
Well, and I think what we struggle with in education is when you become an administrator, you become a manager of people, right? And so as a result, maybe you are also a educational leader and you can have deep conversations with about curriculum with your staff, about classroom management techniques with your staff. But also maybe you have an HR conversation that you need to get to, or you have X, Y,
Mhm.
and Z managerial tasks that you need to tend to. You only have a certain amount of time during the day where you can have those deep conversations to mentor the teachers that you are also supervising and evaluating, to your point earlier, which is a quite a daunting task for an administrator.
Yeah.
So a lot of the conversations that happen through this mentorship model, they rely on four principles. And the first one I would say is the most common one that we touch on, which is this idea of embracing uncertainty. And
Mhm.
wanted to talk a little bit about that with you because as a first year teacher and as a 20th year teacher, uncertainty is all around us, right? We only have a bit of the puzzle at any given time. And yet our brains don't like that. Our brains will fill in the gaps with whatever assumptions make it feel comfortable to make us feel like we have the full story, right?
Yeah.
You as an AP send an email out, teachers may read it and think, well, this is the end of the world. Teachers may read it and be like, oh, this is great. And then someone else will not read it. So now
Yeah.
you have three different perspectives, and who knows if your original intention even got communicated.
Yep.
And so that's something that we speak a lot with the teachers, the idea of you don't have to like it, you don't have to, but you also don't have to hate the uncertainty. It's okay to not know something and to seek clarification. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that I think you gotta walk into this profession knowing that you don't know things, right? So you really gotta be open. I was actually at a recent, call it a conference, but it was talking about how people accept change. And I think sometimes it's easier being new and walking in the door because nothing feels like change because everything's new. So you're
Hmm.
not changing anything. You're just having to absorb it and take it as it comes in, ask questions. I agree with you that a lot of new teachers are feeling like I don't want people to know about what's going on in my room, so I'm not going to ask questions because that would, put up a flag that this is going on. Like, what do you do to start class and get the kids to pay attention when they come back from lunch or something like that, right?
Hmm.
So, because now it sounds like you don't have control of your class, so I'm not going to ask that question. So I don't want to bring light to myself, right? So the uncertainty, you got to seek out answers. Look, everybody knows you're a new teacher. Don't run away from it. You're
Hmm.
new. Everybody
Yeah.
knows you're new. Your administrator knows you're new. So ask those questions, seek out to find out so things don't become uncertain. Hey, that email you sent, can you explain what you were kind of trying to get at with that? They would much rather appreciate you opening that conversation than doing your own interpretation and then just running and staying quiet about it. Like, really got to talk to people about that. I think the uncertainty comes from the fact that we live in an ever changing dynamic field of study. We are going to constantly get new things coming down from the state, from the county, from the district, changing things. So, like I said, that conference I was at really talked about the only way to be good with change is not to get used to anything, but to embrace change for the sake of change. And which is a really weird concept, right? Like you, like you're working, like I think as a teacher, you're trying to work towards if I can just get these lessons right, if I could just get my classroom routines right, if I could just get everything set, then I won't have to do this work as much anymore because everything will be in place. But here's what I'm going to tell you. That may work for that year, and then next year you're going to get a different kind of kid with a different kind of need, and those routines aren't going to work. So you're going to have to change them. And so, what instead of trying to find the perfect solution that always works, embrace the fact that you're going to constantly be changing and be used to being fluid, and that'll help you bring your stress level down. That'll help you bring down like this like nitpicking of yourself not meeting expectations because you're like, it's different. I'm going to try something different this year. And just being used to it is
Well,
really the key.
and either you embrace change or you fight it with all your might, and sometimes you win. So I think of teachers that I had growing up who had a filing cabinet and they knew exactly what lesson they were going to teach at exactly the
Yeah.
same time of year every
Yeah.
year, right? Because you just went to the filing cabinet and you made copies of whatever assignment was associated with that. Regardless of the demographics of your classroom changing, regardless of new technology surfacing, regardless of standards changing, you were going to fit anything and all elements into that little box because you, in your mind, had defeated change and you had
Yes.
gotten to a point where you're comfortable and you're not going to let anything rock that. And you're not at risk because you have tenure, so you're going to do your job and uh that's that. So that I wonder if it's even more dangerous at times
Mhm.
than the folks who leave the profession, right? The folks who
Right.
stay
Right.
and that's the spirit behind why they stay.
I I was explaining to one of my teachers, I was trying to control the situation, right? So you teach, let's just say 5 classes a day. Okay. Let's say you're teaching all the same subject, which is rare, but let's just say you are. So you're like, okay, so I'm going to teach this lesson on this day to my 5 classes. Well, if we all understand the concept that kids are going to learn different, they're going to learn at different paces, they're going to have different personalities. Like, I know that one of my classes will be done with the lesson and have extra time. One of my classes, we won't get through the lesson. One of my classes will be right on pace, and the 2 others, we'll just have to see. And that's on a day-to-day basis. And so, like, I tried to do that for like 2 to 3 years into my teaching, and after a while, I was like, I cannot keep my classes at the same spot. And instead of me trying to make a system that was rigid, the way I solved it was to take the system and say, I'm just going to have a linear lesson plan over this entire unit, let's say. And we're going to go as fast and as slow as the kids need me to go. So I'm not going to be stuck in any pacing of anything. And at first, it sounds crazy to do that, but it brought my anxiety level down. It was able to monitor the kids learning a lot better. And so you're not stuck trying to force change. Like it's the square peg into the round hole type of situation. You're trying to
Mhm.
make something happen that's not going to be able to happen.
Yeah.
So
Well, and it's that battle against like I will control the circumstances versus being
yes.
fluid and moving with the circumstances changing, right? And I
Mhm.
think that that's uncomfortable at first, but when you're able to kind of, I don't want to say master the skill because I don't think you ever do, but it does bring you a lot of peace when you just realize
Mhm,
like things will change. And as long as my core principles, my core values, the way that I operate don't change, I'll adapt, you know?
mhm.
The other principle that I wanted to discuss with you, like I mentioned there before, but really the one that I designed and you probably were a heavy influence in that, has to do with innovation timing. And so I remember that I followed you uh, into my first full-time teaching assignment because of a lesson you came and you did during my science methods class in my
Yeah.
credentialing program.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the most, I'd never seen uh elements of the cell and organelles taught in the way that you taught them by rearranging the furniture in the classroom and making us move around. I don't remember if it was transcription or translation that you were teaching us.
It was yeah, it
Um,
was both. It was the central dogma of biology.
yeah. And that just I was like, whoa, like the idea that you are now immersed in a classroom where the classroom has become the cell and it just taught me a whole different way of teaching. So the principle of timing innovation relies on sometimes teachers having great ideas and it's something that's never been attempted before and they pitch the idea whether it's to an administrator whether it's to a department chair and they don't get the reaction that they expected, which has happened to me time and time again. I feel like anytime that I think I get a novel idea, I feel like it's groundbreaking and I want people to react appropriately. I want them to celebrate me. And,
Right.
and when they don't, we're like, well, maybe my idea sucked, right? Or maybe it's not worth trying, or they don't care, or they don't care about making a
Mhm.
change or trying new things. And all of a sudden we get in our heads and the idea maybe never takes off because the timing wasn't right. And it's sad to see that happen to teachers because it could just be and these are the things that we teach. It could just be that your excitement for your idea didn't allow you to think about is the person that I'm sharing it with ready to hear it? Is this the appropriate time? Is this the appropriate way of doing so? Like, should I share my idea via text versus via phone call versus in person? Um, and I is it possible that this is just not the right time? And can I look at this again in 6 months and try this? And again, the reason why I think of you with that principle is because I don't think I know a teacher or an administrator that has tried more different things in their career to try to get our education system where it needs to be. So, to speak to that, what are your thoughts on that idea of timing innovation?
Um, yeah, it kind of feels like matchmaking again in kind
Yeah.
of a way, right? Like, especially if your ideas are big and it's not just something in your purview. Like if it's something like a lesson in your classroom, if people aren't excited for it, you could just go, you know what, I'm gonna give it a shot. And I'm gonna let the results and the students' reaction kind of guide me as if this is working or not. But when you're talking about some of the things that you and I have done, trying to set up programs, trying to set up school instructional programs and things like that, where you got to get a lot of people to buy into what you're doing, you're right. Like in your mind, you're seeing it as like this is a no-brainer. Like, why are we not doing this? I
Mhm.
had an epiphany and it makes all the sense in the world to me. So let's go. And you realize that you have to play more of this salesman role of like, I see it this way, but do you see things the way I see it so you'll understand this idea the way that I understand it? And you can go about it in lots of different approaches. You can say, like, let me try to help you understand. Or I'll be honest, in some of my situations, I had to go, this place at this time is not the right place for this type of idea. So I'm going to have to, if I really believe in this idea, I got to find a match that is ready for me to handle what I want to do. Um, and that's tough. That's a hard pill to sell because you see the kids and you probably are wanting that idea for the kids that are right in front of you. So how could you imagine going somewhere else? You want to help those kids right now. So that's a tough one. Um, I think having conversations with folks and giving them your rationale. Lot a lot of people operate in a reaction-based kind of mindset. They're like, if there's not a problem, then why are you creating a solution for something that's not a problem? Whereas proactive people are like, I'm trying to prevent things from happening before they even happen. So that's why this idea is very powerful to me. Um, and you're gonna run into some roadblocks if you got a different kind of person. And again, it's hard because, like you said, you try to categorize things as, oh, that's a good idea or that must be a bad idea, but really it's not about that either way. It's just this idea doesn't seem to fit with where this person or this place or this location is trying to go right now. And that's the reason why I say your career is never going to be a straight line, because as you grow as an educator on what's best for students, that doesn't mean the people in the place you're at that moment are growing at the same rate that you're growing at, or going in the same direction that you're going at. And then you have to, sometimes you got to leave the nest and you got to fly on your own and you got to find a place that works for you.
Yeah, and I think I always operated under the assumption that if I was doing something great in my classroom and an administrator came and saw it, that they would then go and tell everybody else, "Hey, you should try this or that," right? But I think, and you mature out of this the longer you teach, uh, from an administrator standpoint, what you see works in one classroom, you can't copy paste into other classrooms because you have a different human being teaching that class. You have different kids there, it's a different subject. And that teacher didn't originate the idea. So whatever they try to do to implement something similar will be a copy paste versus a genuine, heartfelt, natural implementation. Right. And again, that's something that as an immature younger teacher just couldn't resonate with me. I was like, if I'm doing something great, why are they not pushing it to other people to do it great so that everybody can see it? Um, and again, I think if you're young enough in your career, that's something that could drive you out of it because you might think I might go do something else where my innovation is more appreciated.
That's why in our profession, like, first of all, you should be around people who are willing to share ideas, share lessons, share curriculum. Like, sharing is part of our profession. Not because we're saying do it the way I do it, but people go, hey, if you want head start, or you want to see what I'm doing and that can work for you, here, try this out and see how it goes. Um, and that's why the discussion needs to be at the level of, what are you trying to accomplish? What are your goals? What is your rationale? Um, I think of, me and this teacher that I taught next door to, like, just it's a real simple microcosm at all, but he did concept maps. I'd never done concept maps, and I was like, "Oh, this is a cool idea. This is a way to get in vocabulary." Da da da. So of course, just like you said, what am I going to do? I'm going to run it exactly the way that he was running because it was working for him, and I'm doing it in my class, and I'm getting an kind of feeling from the kids, and kids are just going through the motions. They're not learning anything out of it, and half of them aren't doing it. And I talk to the students, and they're like, "Yeah, that seems like a waste of time." And so I was like, I take all that input and I go, all right, how can I make this meet the goal of what I was trying to do, not just do it because somebody else told me to do it, or
Hmm.
because I stole it from somebody. All right, I'm trying to accomplish this. I'm trying to get my kids to write better. I'm trying to get my kids to apply the vocabulary for the class. So let me change some things. And I ended up modifying the way that I did concept maps compared to the way the guy who I got it from did concept maps. And his kids would look at my concept maps and be like, yeah, I think that's stupid. And my kids were like, this is great. And like vice versa. So doesn't mean we're right or wrong or one's better than the other. It's just, for the population I was working with, that was the way to go. For the population he was working with, that was the way to go.
And your styles impacted delivery, right? The way that you behave, the way that you speak, the way that you carry yourself, all goes into the ultimate effectiveness of a lesson.
Well, and you're a salesman. I mean, there's another hat that we wear as teachers, right? You got to sell kids on the idea of what you're doing in class every day. Like, there's not a lot of teenagers that wake up and go, boy, I can't go learn. I can't wait till I go learn all this new stuff that I don't know right now, and wake up early in the morning and stay there for 6.5 hours and go home. Like, no, man, like adults wouldn't even be on board with something like that. So, like, you have to sell kids on the idea of, like, this is going to be for your benefit. This is going to help you this way. This is going to motivate you this way. And if you come in and you're just talking like, hey, we got this lesson and we're going to do this worksheet today. And man, if you're not excited about it, how the heck are you going to get kids excited for it? Like, and so that's why your personality, means so much, is because you have to be excited for what you're doing, because you got to sell other people on that excitement as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know we're running short on time here, but I kind of wanted to give you an opportunity to share what are you excited about right now that you're working on? And you mentioned you were doing a lot of work with CTE. What are some great
Yeah.
things that are happening under your purview right now?
So, like, my previous school, I actually 2 schools ago, I got trained as an avid teacher and an avid coordinator, and I just fell in love with Avid. I thought it was one of the most fantastic things I ever learned because it really helped me know how to do the things I was hoping to do in my classroom. I just made great connections with kids. It was all about getting them ready for college, and everybody's going to go to a four-year university, and you're going to have this wonderful life. And I did really great with that. So then when I came to my current school, first of all, no Avid program, and that's fine. And then all of a sudden there's this CT program, which I knew nothing about. Don't know anything about CT. I've heard of it, but that's about it. So then they say I'm in charge of the CT program. So I had to spend 2.5 years and I'm still learning about CTE. And now I see a whole nother side of education of getting kids ready for the workforce, teaching them skills and labor expectations and how to use community college to get certifications and for you to go be electricians and welders and things of that. And so I'm like, man, that's a whole side of education I didn't even know existed. So I'm excited to learn now how I get kids to college, how I get kids out here, and how can we develop a whole future for every kid that may be different, but every kid can walk out of high school with an idea of what I want to do and how can I make that actually happen. Not just walk out of here with a pipe dream, but walk out of here with specific steps on how to get that done.
It's awesome, man. That is you to a T. The idea of, hearing about something new, and going from you were pushing, a program that prepared you for college, to now you're pushing a program that prepares you for career. And yeah, so proud of you, man. And really,
Proud of you, dude. I can't
again,
believe that you worked for me at one point. That just is weird.
isn't that crazy?
You're like the master now. Like you're the guy.
Far from it. Um, Last question, and we'll close on this. I like to finish up on asking folks if you were to speak to a teacher who is in their fourth or fifth year and thinking about leaving the profession, and you only had one or two sentences to share with them, what would you say?
The I th- Look, I don't know why a person is leaving this profession, but I can pretty much tell you that there will be no other profession that you will feel more successful as a human being than educating young people.
You nailed it. I'm coming back then.
There's nothing that you can go home at night and not feel like, "Man, I am doing, like, the greatest work possible for our society."
Yeah. Yeah. It's not easy, but it's great and it's noble work and it's worthwhile.
Yes, absolutely.
Appreciate your time, Rob. Really grateful again if I haven't said enough. Thank you for joining me and good to see you.
Alright, yeah, anytime, man. Just let me know.
All right, Rob. Take care.
Alright.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it and found it helpful to your teaching journey, please don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube or through your favorite podcast platform. We also appreciate any and all reviews or comments you leave. Thank you for joining us today and tune in next week for our next episode.